GaryCon, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
When did you establish it?
So GaryCon has its roots in a very sad event. My father passed away on March 4th of 2008, and I mean, it was like, that's like the worst thing. If I hope your father is still here now. Okay,
no,
so
here.
You can understand.
Been orphaned since I was 21.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
I'm very sorry to hear that. It's horrible.
Likewise.
Yeah, it's horrible, but it's just like it's a life-changing event. when
It
you
is,
lose your
no?
parents. Yeah, and it's like changes your outlook on things. So I was 37, and it sucked. It was awful. But what happened, the outcome of that, is people started calling and emailing and posting on forums saying how much Gary Gygax meant to them. And they said, I never met him, but it's like my favorite uncle passed away. Or I never knew him, but he impacted me more than anyone outside of my parents.
Me
Right.
and Mike.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, we were just talking to you about this a while ago.
Yeah.
For dinner.
And people would say stuff like, I had a learning disability, I had dyslexia or whatever it may be, and people thought I was stupid. And I saw the covers of these books, and I thought, that's really cool. I want to know what's inside there. So it gave me the discipline, the perseverance to sit down and force myself to learn how to read. And now I'm a doctor, right? Or whatever it is. Or I was incredibly painfully shy. I could barely talk to other people. But I saw these people playing this game, and it looked fun. And so I watched for a little while, and they finally, invited me in or whatever. And then I learned, I'm somebody else. I'm not me, right? But you learn how to, those skills you're learning apply to real life.
Not only
too.
that, you're interacting with people also.
So, right. So there's all sorts of great benefits from role playing. It helps so many people overcome things, meet their best friends, meet their spouses, whatever the case was. And then some people said, I'm going to make a pilgrimage to Lake Geneva to pay my respects. I was like, uh-oh. Like, my stepmother wasn't even going to have a funeral like a funeral. She's like, well, let's do this. It's not like even a ceremony, right? And I was like, okay, well, we should probably do that. And then, so we did that, but it was still small, right?
Right.
And that was private. And so I talked to my brothers and sisters, and I rented the American Legion Hall, which is like one of those locations where you'd have those little small conventions where I'd say,
okay,
my name's Luke Gygax, you want my autograph? So I had lots of good memories from those places, right? And so we put up a screen, and we played the D&D cartoons and the Futurama episode that he was on. I set up a podium, and you could share your favorite story with my dad. And I invited everyone to play games. I said, just play any game you want.
Wow.
Play D&D, play a card game, play a board game.
That was his memorial?
And that was like a wake, essentially, or whatever.
Yeah.
And we brought dishes to pass, and we had, the bar. There was a bar in the American Legion, so people could have, food and drink, talk to each other, and play games, which is really the way to celebrate my dad's life. That's what he loved.
So basically, it was a celebration of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Jolly Blackburn was there, and he said, hey, Luke, it was Harold Johnson, who worked for my dad and also wrote some early stuff. He's like, hey, Luke, this was really cool. You should do it. You should do this again next year. And Jolly was there, and he said, yeah, you can call it GaryCon. I didn't realize that that's the name of the convention in their world of Knights of the Dinner Table. Wow. Their Gen Con is called GaryCon because they have a character named Gary Jackson, who's my dad and Steve Jackson mixed together. And so they call it, so GaryCon is their Gen Con. But I didn't know that at the time. So I said, okay. And so I named it GaryCon. And the next year I just threw a game day. I didn't know how many people would show up. I just kind of winged it, right? And I just figured I'd spend a couple $1,000s, but I think 173 people showed up. I didn't sell tickets. I just show up, but somebody was smart enough to write badges and number them. So I think there's 173
This was year 2.
GaryCon 1. So okay. 0 was kind of
Zero
his funeral.
was the funeral, okay.
Yeah, and so the guys were like, well, wait a second, you paid for this, right? So you got to charge money. He's like, I'm not charging money. He's like, we'll take donations. So Jolly brought a whole bunch of Hackmaster and Knights of Dinner Table comics. And then at 5 o'clock, Tim Kask and a couple of people just like said, hey, everybody sit down at a table. We're going to auction off some stuff. So he's like, here, I've got this that I've signed. And people drew, artists drew stuff or whatever, and they sold things to people there. And I ended up with $400 more
than
I started with. And I said, well, I can't keep this. So I said, okay, I guess I'll start a company and this will go towards the next one.
Yes.
And so then I rented a bigger place and we had like 240 people and 400 people and 450 and kept growing and growing. And
So what, 15 years now?
we just did finish 16.
16,
Yeah.
wow.
So 16 was, we sold out. So if as many people as we get, we think there's 3,000, close to 3,300, something like that people. It's the most we could.
Still in Lake Geneva? Or?
Yeah, in Lake Geneva. So it's in Lake Geneva, which is kind of like, it's a sacred location. It's where D&D was written.
Yeah.
It's where my dad lived his life, you know, so it's.
The pilgrimage to Lake Geneva.
So Lake, which is a tiny little town in southeastern Wisconsin. It's like maybe 6,000 or 7,000 people now. But because it's a resort town, they have a decent, you know, convention, a hotel with a convention center in it.
Visit abbaeservices.com for fast medical transcription service. This podcast episode is brought to you by AB Music Creative.